我仔啊死咗啦，你仲要皮光肉滑。
Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, thank you for finding me. Thank you for watching this video. If you could subscribe, if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up, give me a comment, and all that fun stuff. What are we here to talk about today? Johnny To. Yay, I love Johnny To. If you watch this channel, you know I'm a huge fan of Johnny To. And we have a new Blu-ray release of PTU, which is a classic Johnny To film. Came out in 2004. It is from Eureka Entertainment, so it's a UK release, which means it is a Region B release, so you would either need a multi-region player or a Region B player to live in Region B or what have you. This is out the 21st of June of 2021. This film was originally released, like I said, in 2003. It stars Simon Yam, it stars Lam Suet, it stars Maggie Sue, it stars, I think, Ruby Wong, and like a lot of the other kind of like the peripheral or smaller roles are played by people you'll have seen in other Johnny To films because he tends to use the same characters over and over again. So there's a lot to talk about with this release. I'm going to talk about like the physical aspects of the release, and then I'm going to talk about the bonus features that are on here. There's a lot of bonus features on here. There's a lot of really good stuff. And then I'm going to talk about kind of my impressions of this film. Having just rewatched it, I watched it like 3 times this week. I haven't seen this movie in a while, but I have seen it several times before. I do own like an older Blu-ray of it, and it's a film I've looked at pretty carefully because it's actually the premise of it is in part inspired by a film called Stray Dog, directed by Kurosawa, which came out in 1949, which is one of my favorite movies. I've written essays about that movie before and stuff like that, so it was a really important, or a really interesting point of comparison for me. Because if you don't know, Johnny To in general is very heavily inspired by Kurosawa, but they're very different filmmakers, so it's very interesting to kind of make those comparisons. So to talk about the physical aspects of a release, the first 2,000, I believe, run of this have a there's a slipcase by Gregory Sacre, and I might be mispronouncing that, who also goes by, I have the press release here. This is actually pretty cool. I'm excited about this, so I can give you all the information that you need to know. Gregory Sacre, who goes by Gokaiju, I think. Gokaiju, yeah. And that's the slipcase, which is super cool, and that's the first 2,000. And there's also a booklet with like an essay by Stephen West and from Neo magazine, and then you get like the cover art on the inside as well for the Blu-ray cover as you pull it out of the slipcase. And in terms of the presentation of the film, it looks fantastic. Like I said, I have a DVD of this movie, and it's a good DVD copy of this movie. And one of the things that really drove home how awesome this presentation of the film looks to me is that in the bonus features, there are clips of the film pulled from a DVD source and edited into like interviews and stuff. And it's so startling, the contrast between, because the DVD looks fine. Like it really does look fine. But Johnny To's films are very pristine. He shoots super wide and he shoots super clear. And like I said, I mean, he's inspired by Kurosawa, right? So these super big widescreen vistas. And as Frank Zheng does an audio commentary on this, he also talks about how Johnny To was inspired by Sergio Leone and like the kind of Clint Eastwood Westerns. And those two have that super wide, super big kind of format. And it's just so epic and pristine, and it looks so clear. But the thing that really stood out to me and the difference between the DVD and the Blu-ray clips is the subtleties and the depth of the colors. This movie has a really unique lighting scheme. It's lit with a lot of like spotlights that are set up to kind of like look like street lights in the setup of the film. The whole film takes place at night. So if you're unfamiliar with this film, it's a very simple premise. A police officer loses his gun, and these other cops agree to help him over the course of that night try to recover it. And if they don't find it, then they give up, and they're going to like report the lost gun to the superintendent, and the cop who lost it will probably get in trouble and stuff like that too. You have a lot of other subtleties going on here with the setup, which I'll talk about later, but that's basically in a nutshell what this movie is about. And so the whole thing takes place at night, and so you have the street lights, but they're these blaring, bright, very white spotlights. And then you have, and Johnny To talks in one of the interviews here about actually he was inspired by Chinese paintings for how he wanted to do the lighting scheme. And it just looks so good. And you see like the darkness of the night and like the neon lights and the blues and the blacks and the stuff like that, like in the background, but this really hot, like bright white light in the foreground, and these contrasts and these, it looks incredible. Like it really does. And if you've seen Johnny To's films, generally speaking, you know that they're very pristine looking film. So to have them on, like a proper HD Blu-ray presentation is really fantastic. So to talk about the bonus features, there are 2 interviews with Johnny To on here, 2 interviews with Simon Yam, an interview with Maggie Sue, and then a trailer. The Johnny To interviews are about 23 minutes altogether, the 2 of them together. The Simon Yam interviews total about 30 minutes. The Maggie Sue interview is, I believe, like 12 or 13 minutes, and they're all fantastic interviews. And Johnny To talks a lot about, like, the film was shot, everyone mentions this, over the course of 3 years. Johnny To made 7 other movies in that time, and this was his, like, personal film passion project. And he talks a lot about how, the film is an experiment and an exploration in filmmaking, and, like, trying to make a film that's completely unexpected and strange and extremely unique. And he talks about how this film was very popular in the West, it was very popular in France and stuff like that, and how a lot of people saw it as an art house film, but to him it was just a drama in which he wanted to kind of just use unexpected language and unexpected plot movement and stuff like that. And because he did unexpected things in it, it kind of became perceived as an art house film. So it's really interesting how he talks about that. He also talks about how, the film is, it looks a lot at kind of police brutality and violence, but also the violence and the brutality of the criminals, and how they're in contest with one another, constantly kind of butting heads, and they egg on one another's violence and stuff like that. But he's talking about how he says he doesn't agree with that as a citizen, that he does, with police breaking the law and police violence and stuff like that. But he also says that he thinks that any kind of rational, compassionate, whatever human being can sympathize with the police if you put yourself in their situations, because they have a very dangerous, very violent job. And at the end of the day, they all want to get home, and they have families, and they want to live. And so they, as a unit, close ranks, and they do anything to help one another. And when a police officer dies or something like that, or is injured or hurt or in danger, they really come together. And even the cops, because there are cops in this film, like the Maggie Sue character doesn't necessarily agree with this mission of helping this guy find his gun. Like the Simon Yam character is like, we're gonna help this guy find the gun. The Maggie Sue character is kind of like, I think we should just report it. But she's like, okay, fine, I'll give you this one night. So even if there's a disagreement among the cops, they're still all cops, and they still operate as a unit. And there's a really interesting character who's the Ruby Wong character, who is she stands in opposition to all of these other cops who close ranks. And Johnny To calls it the blue curtain, right? Behind the blue curtain, there's all these other cops, and then there's her, and she's kind of standing in opposition to them. And then at the end, you find out, to use like a cheap, really easy, junky metaphor, they're wolves and she's not, right? She's like the sheep who wants to be the wolf, but she learns that she isn't. It's really interesting. I'm getting too far into my own analysis of this. I was supposed to be talking about the bonus features. Simon Yam is great. He talks about how he played a character who is very silent and very enigmatic, and he can be a very bad person. He can also be a very good person, and he very much has his own moral code, and he was completely different than any character Simon Yam had ever played before, and he had to kind of take himself back from that, and from what he usually relied on as an actor, do something different. But he also talks about how Johnny To is really great with actors, tremendous understanding of psychology, the nuances of psychology, of character and world that Johnny To talks about in his interviews it's really mind-blowing. And like, in an abstract way, right, that anyone who makes art at the level that Johnny To makes it at, or craft, or whatever you want to call it, anyone who's that fucking good at what they do, as Johnny To is, obviously has that understanding. But to hear him articulate it, and to hear these really fantastic, experienced actors talk about that too, is a really great insight into this film and why it is the way it is, and how the characters act and things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, Simon Yam talks about, he and Johnny To have this they've known each other for like 30 years, and he talks about how like Johnny To didn't even give him a script, he just hired him, and that Simon Yam like didn't know scene to scene what it was going to be, but he thought that worked really well, because he's not thinking like, okay, in this scene I'm going to be like this, because in this next scene I have to be like this. He just kind of played the scene as it was in the moment, and he thought that contributed very much to his performance. And like, it just a lot of the nuances of the craft. And he talked about how you can't gain weight, in 3 years, because you have to look the same every time Johnny To calls and is like, hey, we're going to shoot another scene from PTU. It could be like 18 months since you shot the first chunk of scenes, and it's like, I got to look the same. I need a haircut, and I need, like stuff like that. It's really interesting. And Maggie Sue talks about how one of the things that she said that was really funny is that Simon Yam is very, very funny and would be cracking everyone up, and then be like, okay, roll camera, and he's like this brutal police officer, and she had a hard time taking him seriously because she knew who he was as a human being. She also said she was intimidated to work with him because he's so experienced as an actor, but that he was really nice and generous and helped all the other actors, like would answer questions for them and give them advice and help them scene to scene. And she said that Lam Suet is like just as funny, if not funnier, than Simon Yam, so it's also really hard to take him seriously. And I guess he's a Mandarin speaker originally, so he has like a pretty heavy accent in Cantonese, and it was just really funny to work with him. And he's like a funny guy. He's not an actor at all. I don't know if you know his story, but he's a very well-known actor now. He's a tremendous character actor. He's in a lot of Johnny To films, but he was a PA who worked for Johnny To, and Johnny To was like, that guy might work in a movie. I think he had like an ambition of being an actor or something like that, and Johnny To was like, I think he might work for this role, and he put him in the movie, and then he became like an actor and like a movie star and stuff. So there's over an hour worth of interviews with these people, and they really dive into this film and give you so much information about it. It's a really tremendous release for that insight into the film. And Johnny To is a very high level filmmaker. He's extremely intelligent. He's extremely technically gifted, and he is really able to articulate in an interview those things. And the same goes for Maggie Sue and Simon Actor. They're like the top, or Simon Yam, top of their game as actors. And Simon Yam is one of my probably top 7 or 8. I don't know if I put him in the top 5 because it's so hard, because there's so many great Hong Kong actors, but he's in my top 10 for sure. I mean, I think he's absolutely incredible. He's actually one of the first. I've been a Johnny To fan for maybe like 15, 16 years at this point, and apart from Jackie Chan and Chow Yun-fat, like Sammo Hung and Bruce Lee, like the really obvious ones, Simon Yam was the first Hong Kong actor I really loved, and like whose work I would like seek out and stuff like that. So I just think he's an incredible actor, and he's fantastic in this film. So I think that gives you like a pretty good impression of. Oh, and I should talk about Frank's commentary, which is fantastic as always. I love Frank's commentaries. I mean, the guy grew up in Hong Kong, so he, one of the things that's so tremendous about this commentary is this movie is supposed to take place in one contained area, but it actually takes place over all of Hong Kong. And Frank goes through, he's like, that takes place there, that takes place there. Like he explains like the Cantonese dialogue, which he always does, which I find to be so helpful since I don't speak Cantonese. He talks about the history of what PTU stands for Police Tactical Unit, and they're these like almost like paramilitary police officers. So Frank talks about the history of them, and he has really tremendous insight into character in this film, the character motivation and how it relates to people's place in Hong Kong society, and like how they relate to one another in different instances. And like everything was shot on location, so it's not just that Frank's like, this road is in X place within the city of Hong Kong, but he's like, that restaurant is actually kind of famous and it's known for this and that. And like it's so much insight into not only the kind of the filmmaking, but the culture and the city. And I can't get enough of the commentary tracks from Frank, and I really love this one. So very high marks for that. And so to give you just kind of like a couple minutes of my impressions on this film, like I said, I hadn't seen this movie in a couple years, and maybe like 5 years, 6 years. And the thing that really struck me in rewatching this film is that it feels like it's very much about futility. And Johnny To says in his interview that in a way he wanted the film to reflect like the randomness of day-to-day life, right? And how there would be things that had tremendous weight to them and things that were just kind of random and just there, and people would try to read too much into them, but they don't really mean anything. And like there would be instances where, like, for instance, the film is about a guy who loses his gun, right? And Johnny To's talking about how like you lose your keys like every day, and it like drives you nuts. You're like, fuck, where are they? And like all of these things can be translated into day-to-day life. So I think that's really interesting. But the whole film takes place at night, and in a way that for filmmaking that's practical, because you don't have to deal with crowd control, and Johnny To actually talks about that in his interviews and stuff like that. But it's this completely empty city, and it's like this surreal alien landscape, and the only people who exist in this movie, really by and large, there's like a couple scenes with like random bystanders in it, but by and large the only people in this movie are the cops and the criminals. and like they're both eating at the same restaurant, and there's a really fantastic scene in the beginning of this film where they're changing tables at this restaurant, right? And it's a very clear metaphor for like, you know, the cops don't exist without the criminals don't exist without the cops. What's really the difference between them other than you decide which gang you're in, right? um, and and so all of this insane stuff happens, and all of these people die, and all this violence is visited upon these people, and all these weird things happen to people's, you know, the true character of who these people are as human beings is tested over the course of this night. And Frank actually has some really great insights into the stuff you hear at the very, very beginning of the film, and how that arcs all the way to the very, very end of the film and ties the whole thing together that I honestly didn't even pick up on when I rewatched this. That's really fascinating. But this whole tapestry of like violence, and there are no real, like, these people are, Johnny To wants us to empathize with them and understand where they're coming from, and that they are just normal human beings, whatever, working a job or whatever. But as I said earlier, they are wolves, with the exception of one character, right? These are predators, these people. Like, they're like top of the food chain people. They're people who don't back down from a fight. And it erupts into violence, and like, you know, family members of people are dying. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but like, you meet characters who are related to people who die, and they want revenge, and it's just an endless cycle of violence and chaos, and in a lot of cases randomness, for nothing, ultimately for nothing. And again, I don't want to spoil it, but a lot of the things come to nothing in the end. And it's almost like this very nihilistic film, but in a way, you know, you could, in his interview, actually, Simon Yam says something really interesting where he talks about how there are so many American Vietnam War movies, and in his mind, the reason those movies exist is because American filmmakers never want us to forget how pointless and how horrible that war was, because we never want another war. We don't want to live in that world anymore, and that ultimately a film should be about trying to generate harmony and remind people of where they're from and who they are, and the things that connect them and the tapestry that they're a part of. And I think you could very easily see that as the message of this film, is that all of this violence and all of this bad behavior, the criminality, the cops, the abuse of power, authoritarianism, you know, the extortion of the criminals, the impulsive, meaningless violence, all of it is pointless, and it comes to nothing, and no one gains anything from it. And it's a zero-sum game. Live by the gun, die by the gun, right? Live by the sword, die by the sword, whatever it is. Like, they're all just headed for a grave somewhere, and they're helping each other get there earlier than they should. So my name is Will. I'm talking about PTU, the really fantastic Johnny To 2004 film, as released by Eureka Entertainment, Region B Blu-ray release. I should remind you. Let me know what you think about this film in the comments. If you're excited about the Blu-ray, if you already ordered it, if you plan on ordering it, if you have any questions about the film, fire away. If you want to know what other Johnny To films to watch, fire away. We could get some awesome stuff going in the comments. Again, I thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.